Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. How are we on the last episode of number 6 already? It's weird, right? So I don't know if it sunk in until just when I sat down to do this reaction, but I went back and watched episode 10 and I was like, man, that was the penultimate episode. Wait, what? I'm wearing my Given shirt because, like Given, there's only 11 episodes of this series, and I hate it. So, the only good thing in both the cases of with Given and with the show is that there is a manga that is more extensive. And so, the one caveat that I have with this series is that I am going to go back and finish reading the manga. I don't know why in the last episode I said I've read volumes 1 through 4. I've not. I've read volumes 1 through 3. Volume 3 ends at episode 7, and I've not read volume 4 yet. That's where I'm going to start at. And so I still have volumes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I have 6 more volumes of manga to read, which has me excited because that means that from episode 8 to here and beyond, I haven't explored how the manga adapts it, or how the manga originally was, and how it transitioned when it was adapted into this anime. So that has me excited. I find myself, I'm not feeling sad about this being the last episode, because I still have to read the manga and go through it. So next week, I'm going to have a soapbox episode, and I'm going to put it both in the soapbox playlist and the playlist for number 6. And it'll be on here for this time slot next week. And I'm going to be going through and talking about what has changed, basically reviewing the manga for volumes 1 through 3, like I've been talking with you all about it here during these reactions. And then for volumes 4 through 9, I'm going to go over them and explain what was put into the anime, what changed, what was left out. I've heard the ending is different, so I definitely want to talk about that, and then talk about my overall impressions of the manga versus the anime. And I'm sure I'm going to like the manga better because it's longer and there's more content, but I might be surprised. So I don't know. I'm sad number 6 is ending with episode 11, but I'm not sad as I usually am with the series because I still have the manga to read. Now, when I get done with the manga and do the soapbox episode, I'll probably be a lot sadder because then it will be the end. Because I've liked this series. I've really liked Shion and Nezumi's relationship. I've loved Inukashi, Regika, the whole dystopian future with number 6. It's the one aspect, and some of you told me from the very start, I think one of you commented in like episode 3, you were like, I love the dystopian concepts, but they're not fully explored. And I totally agree with you on that point because we're already at the end of the series, and I feel like there's so much more that needs to be said. And so I talked about it at the end of the last reaction. There's so much plot lines and threads that I think they're going to abandon. And I hate that they end it so soon because I think if they'd followed the manga and made like a full, 24 episode season, if you could do that, then I think it would have been much better. But I'm going to reserve the rest of my judgments for after this episode and then talk about it then and what all I'm hoping out of the manga. So I'll talk about that with you guys whenever the reaction's over, but I can't believe we're on episode 11. So it's just weird. It's surreal. But anyway, I hope you all enjoy this reaction. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you all for recommending this show. I'm sure I'll talk about it more in the manga soapbox and then in the live stream that we do. But this series has been a lot of fun, and it has had some really cool concepts, and the character developments between specifically Nezumi and Shion have been intriguing. So I want to save the rest of what I want to talk about until after the reaction. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started here and watch episode 11 of number 6 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Holy cow. Oh, okay. Okay. That ending. That episode. I've never felt more happy that there's a manga to read after this than I have with this episode because I feel like someone pressed the fast forward button this whole episode, and you're just watching things happen in fast forward motion, and you just want to stop and press play and be like, hey, maybe we should slow that down. Maybe we should see what actually happens with the rest of the scene. And it just, that went by so quickly, and there was a resolution, but oh man, this whole episode screamed there was stuff cut. Like, this whole episode screams it. Last episode screamed it towards the end, and this episode, it's like we just fast forwarded through so much, and I want to go back and expand on it and figure out what in the world was missed. Because, okay, going through this episode, and so Regika and there's just so much. There's so much. I kept saying, but what else? Like, in my head, I was like, but what else? But what else? Like, this whole time. Because Regika and Inukashi, they meet in the warehouse. And it's like, okay, you got in there to help them get to Safu. Cool. But what else? And so we don't get to see much of them until they try to make their escape. And then they run into Shion and Nezumi again. So there was that. Obviously, in the last episode, Safu having some freaky Akira vibes, getting possessed by Aurelius. Aurelius. I'm going to call her Aurelius. Getting possessed by her, who's basically this giant wasp goddess. Which now that makes much more sense of why it's the wasps, because she's like the goddess and she takes the form of a wasp. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when they get up to see her, there's a weird turn of events in this. So the whole scene of Shion, Nezumi, and Safu together needed to be like 20 minutes longer. And I don't usually say that about scenes, especially like rescue scenes and stuff, but it needed to be longer because, yeah, Safu has been possessed by this goddess. She was compromised the moment she got out of that tank. Like, Safu was no more. She has been merged with this goddess. Nezumi is absolutely right. She is no longer Safu. Even though Safu is still a part of her, she is compromised. She has been turned into something else. Like, she was gonna die the moment Aurelius showed up in her head. Like, that was clear. Because Aurelius is wanting to escape, right? And get back in the world. Sure, okay. But that conversation needed to be so much longer. Like, I feel like I get where Shion was instantly coming from. He's like, we did all this planning. We made it here. We need to get Safu out of here and go. But then I did like that Safu was like, Nezumi, you and I both heard the song. And she's like, I heard the song because I'm the vessel that's going to have Aurelius in me. That's why I can hear the song. You can hear the song because you're one of the last survivors of the forest. And you're the one, your people were connected with Aurelius. So that's why you can hear it. So, but then the thing that I get, Aurelius wants to get released. And unfortunately, to get released, that means Safu has to die. But there's a weird turn of events in there. In the dialogue, Shion gets mad that it seems like he sees number 6 as having experimented on. Because Aurelius explained, she's like, there was a sample of people that were experimented on to see if they could harbor me. And it looks like Shion was one of those people, maybe. Nezumi definitely was. Safu probably was. And it seems like, my question is, were all the people that were invaded by the wasps test subjects at some point? Because in the manga, I'm only at volume 3 of the manga, but in the manga, the scientists for Organization X, which are completely abandoned in this episode, the members of Organization X, the main scientist, the one that gave Nezumi his name, he says that they need Shion and Nezumi back because they're samples. And I'm like, okay, cool. That makes sense. That's why they want them back. So that leads me to believe that the people harboring the wasps are samples, but does that mean Nezumi had a wasp in him too? I feel like I need to go read the manga now to know the answers to these questions. But so I get that Shion gets mad that he gets mad at number 6 because he's like, you experimented on my friend. And when Safu comes through Aurelius and she's like, I just wanted to see you, Shion, and I love you, and she finally can express those emotions, and Shion realizes it. Yeah, I get why he gets totally pissed off, because he's like, number 6 did this to my friend. I'm mad. We just saw Shion do an outburst where he killed a guy in the last episode. So I get that. And Nezumi holding him down makes sense. Because Nezumi's like, no. Wasn't there a third option? And then both Nezumi and Shion this episode try to double cross each other and be like, no, it was just a fantasy. And Shion being like, I like the turn that I'm okay with the turn that Shion was like, I was just saying there's a third option to try to argue with you and make you see, but it was just a fantasy. Like, I get disillusioned Shion, and he's now seeing the true nature of number 6 and just how terrible they are, and that's what Nezumi warned him about and what he didn't want Shion to change from. I get that, and I get why Nezumi knocks him out. But it's like, Shion, I don't think Shion can come to grips in that moment that, yeah, Safu's gotta die. She's going to die one way or another. She's either going to die by Eurilius' hand, or Nezumi's going to blow the place up, and she's going to die too. So, and I don't think... I mean, I get a little frustrated that Shion got mad at Nezumi, because he's like, why'd you have to kill her? This was all part of your plan all along. It's like, Shion, y'all were going to rescue Safu, but you didn't know she was harboring a goddess. So, plans change in that moment. That compromised the whole thing. And you could tell Nezumi was like, we came to rescue this girl, but we can't now. The thing that Nezumi didn't tell Shion, and that I want to see expanded more on in the manga, is that Nezumi started when Shion said he could hear Safu's voice, you saw last episode with Nezumi that he was like starting to put the pieces together. You could see the gears in his head turning, like, oh, you're hearing her voice. I'm hearing her voice. Something's not right. Why would Safu be coming through to us? Unless it has to do with Eurilius, which we just learned about in episode 8. So, in episode 7. So it's like, we learned about in episode 8 and episode 9. And through 10, whatever. But yeah, so that makes sense that Nezumi has put 2 and 2 together once they got to Safu, and he was like, oh crap, yep, she's been invaded by this goddess. We're not getting her out of here. It's going to be mass chaos. That's not going to go down. So Nezumi, I totally get his side with wanting to be like, Shion, we don't have a choice anymore. Like, this was not on the table. And that whole scene up there makes total sense to me. And Shion's turn where he's like, it was just an illusion. I didn't really believe it. It was a fantasy. That all makes sense too in the context. What frustrates me is when they take the elevator down and they get out of there, and Nezumi's like, no, we had to go. We had to do this. This was her request. She wanted to get released. It was going to happen one way or another. What frustrates me is when they get down the shaft and Shion turns on Nezumi and he's like, oh, it's all your fault. Like, you've been planning this from the beginning. And Nezumi's like, I've been trying to adapt to this situation as we go. And then Nezumi ends up getting shot. And so I feel like that whole scene it felt like it was on fast forward. I felt like the manga will expand that so much more, or change it or alter it or whatever. Like, I feel like that's going to be such a different scene when I read the manga. And so I'm excited to talk to you all about it, because I was like, what's happening? And then I did like the parallel. I did like the coming full circle of Nezumi coming in with the bloody arm and Shion saving him, and then Nezumi cutting the bug out of Shion. And in this moment, Shion gets to save him again and cut the bullet out. Like, I get that. I like that parallel. It just went by so fast. And the Wasps invading number 6. Like, it was Holy Day. We didn't really get a lot with Holy Day. It just seemed like it just started. And it seemed like Yaoman was part of a terrorist plot. Like, the whole point was for them to attack number 6 and make a spectacle and a scene of it, which is not what Karen wanted. And so I'm glad she wasn't involved in that. But he, like, just abandoned his niece with her, which in the end she abandons the niece. So it's like, but he abandoned the niece with her to do this terrorist plot. And man, the Wasp thing just escalates. Like, they just all start attacking at once. And that makes me think, I talked about it in the moment of the reaction, but that makes me wonder if, one, I mean, it was a government planned thing, but two, if it was Eurilius being like, these Wasps are it's all part of they're part of me, and it's part of the experiment that didn't work. Like, these subjects were impudent. Like we said, the subject matter were impudent. And Shion's kind of like, oh, like, Shion's one of the experiments that wasn't a perfect fit, but Safu was. So Safu wasn't invaded by the Wasp because she was the fit for the goddess. Whereas, or life force, whatever you want to call it. And everybody else, they were impudent, imperfect subjects, and that's why the Wasp just plucked it out. And it's like, your life force is now going to be part of Eurilius. So it's like, awesome, cool. It just happened so fast, and I thought it was actually hilarious. Like, unintentionally, like, not only hilarious, but disturbing when Yaoman finally gets to bring the message to the people of number 6, and all the people, like, that he's viewing as his audience, they're all dead. Like, there's just wasps swarming everywhere, they're dead, and he's trying to deliver this message, and it's like, oh, dude. And then we find at the end that he dies. that he got stung by the wasp too. Which, I'm not sad that he died because he was creepy to Karen, but I'm also like, that's just so odd and ironic. But yeah. Yeah, and then the wasp's all turning into the life force for Aurelius. I mean, that makes sense in the context of she's a goddess. She's summoning her spawn back to her. And tearing down the walls. That's how you do it. But I wanted more dialogue and communication between Nezumi and Shion at the end there to be like, look, Safu helped us break down those walls. Like, she inadvertently became a vessel for Aurelius, and Aurelius broke down the walls to basically free herself and free, because she was like, I was contained for years and now I'm breaking free. And this is my way of breaking humanity free, is to separate and destroy all these walls between you all. Like, I wanted more commentary on that, and we don't get it at the end. I thought they were both going to die for a second. I was like, when they get shot, I'm like, oh, they're going to die. And I've heard people say that the manga ends differently than the anime. And so when that happened, I was like, oh my God, are they going to die in this anime? And it's just going to be the end? And it's just, I thought for a second this whole anime was going to have a ridiculously dark, tragic ending. And it was just going to be like Aurelius being free, people dead, Regika and Inukashi have the baby. Like, I thought it was just going to end there. And I was going to be like, well, that's okay. We're going to go Romeo and Juliet on this, I guess. And okay, so we have that, and then it makes sense that Inukashi, like that turn where she's like, fine, then just die here if you don't want to leave, like, and then Regika being sad that Shion died, like, that all made sense. That all was in character. I was fine with that. It was a nice callback to Inukashi being like, I'm gonna survive, and then Nezumi telling her like, no, you're not, and her being like, yeah, I am, and then piecing out. That all made sense. Very in character. Totally fine with that. I don't know how I feel about the Beauty and the Beast Enchantress style resurrection. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't. I really don't. Because it just happens so fast. It happens so fast. And a part of me is like, okay, if Safu's going to come back and heal him and Nezumi. And for a second I thought she wasn't going to heal Nezumi, and I was like, man, burn, dude. A part of me is like, okay, it's kind of cliche that Aurelius comes back with Safu and heals Shion and Nezumi. It is kind of cliche to me. But here's my thing. I'm like, if Safu had the entire time that the correctional facility was blowing up, if they were going to go this route with the anime, and maybe the manga does the same thing. Don't spoil me because I'm going to read the manga. But if the manga went the same route and had this whole Safu as Aurelius appears to heal the two of them and spare them from this destruction, if they're going to go that route, what I wanted to see was throughout Nezumi and Shion trying to escape the facility, us cutting back to Safu and Aurelius, because it's been established in that moment that she heals Shion that Safu can't appear in like this hologram Aurelius, like, I mean, she's a life force at this point. She's basically a goddess, so she can transport and move around the correctional facility however she wants to. And if she wants to take a human form temporarily, even if it's like a hologram, sure. And by like a hologram, I mean like she projects herself like Safu, but really she's this ball of energy that is Aurelius. So if they wanted to go that route, what I would have liked to have seen would have been, as Shion and Nezumi are trying to make their way through the correctional facility to escape, us cutting back to Safu as Aurelius, because Safu and Aurelius obviously have bonded and are merged together, and I would like to have seen Safu be like, look, we need to save him. I want to spare him. I want to spare him and Nezumi, because they're really the only ones that they spare. The only ones that they spare out of all these people that have died or are going to die are Nezumi and Shion. They're the only ones that get healed. Everybody else just manages to escape harm's way through their own devices. But I would have been like Safu telling Aurelius, be like, look, I love Shion. I want to spare him and spare the last of the forest people together, and this will be my final act as Safu. This will be my final act of humanity, is my compassion to spare both of them. Even though they killed me, even though they don't care for me and don't reciprocate that. And not that they don't care, because Shion cares for Safu very much. But she's like, even if they don't reciprocate my love, even if they've tried to destroy me to release you, I want to save them both, because that's the right thing to do. Like something along those lines. I wanted there to be some conversation where Safu convinces Aurelius to be like, okay, fine, we'll use my life force to save these two, and then we're gonna, escape into the nether sphere, whatever. Like, there just needed to be more setup, because it comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh god, I'm just very conflicted about it. I'm very, very conflicted. Because it did seem a little bit cliche. Like, as much as I love Nezumi singing and Safu singing in that moment, and we get to see their two songs connect, I needed more context, and I needed more build-up to make that resurrection seem to have more weight to it and to have more impact, right? And then from there, things get crazy. Like, they manage to get out of the correctional facility. Nezumi sees Safu as Aurelius, which is the giant wasp goddess, the queen, the ruler, and then they get out and the wall crumbles. And I like the idea of people from both sides coming to where the wall has crumbled. Like, I really like that. And then Shion's mom, Karen, she just pieces out and leaves that little girl behind. Like, I almost wish she would have grabbed the little girl and took her with him. Because I'm like, you just abandoned that girl with, like, an animatronic rat. Like, okay, you're fine, good. He can watch you, we're fine. I gotta go see my son. I mean, I get that scene, and it's fine. I wish she had taken the little girl with her, though, and not just abandoned this child in the streets where people have just been dying and there's been explosions. But, and then we find out Yaoman dies, and then, I don't know why. Here's the thing with the baby. The baby's confusing to me because, for a number of reasons. One, we saw in the last episode that Inakashi untied the jacket and set the baby out with the intentions of doing something with it. So my question is, did Inakashi tie the baby back up in Shion's jacket and say, go see if Shion and Nezumi are alive? Because as far as they know, they're dead. So why would Inakashi tie the baby back up in the jacket to the dog and send it on its way? Why would you do that? Because it doesn't make sense. The dog was established. She had established the dog was going to take care of the baby in the last episode, like her mom, or like Inakashi's mother had taken care of Inakashi, had taken care of them. So who tied the baby back up? Did Inakashi tie the baby back up? Why? Were you just going to send it off and be like, I don't want this kid, do something with it? Because the dog seemed like it was going to take care of the baby, so why send it away? And then it just happens to show up, and Shion's like, Nezumi, we got a kid! Look at us! We've made up! We kissed, we've made up, it's fine. We're going to raise a kid together in the wastelands. Isn't this great? I loved the kiss paralleling at the end, where Nezumi's like, you'll be fine. But I wanted more dialogue. There needed to be so much more conversation. Like, especially after that episode where you two have argued with each other and blamed each other for Safu's death and for the downfall of number 6, and your morals have been mentally tested so drastically, they needed to have a sit down and a conversation. There needed to be a conversation in that resolution before. There needed to be a conversation in that conclusion before there was resolution, or some kind of epilogue, something. But we don't get it. I liked the tiebacks to the OP. The rainbow and the shattering of the correctional facility was like the little squares that we saw in the OP coming off of Shion and Nezumi. I really liked that. I thought that was cool symbolism and tying to it. But I feel like there was just so much unsaid that we didn't get to see in this episode, and I wanted it so bad. I wanted to see it so bad. It's like, So, yeah. I desperately have to read the manga now to find out what happened. I want to know what parts of... I feel like up until episode 10, everything pacing-wise was pretty good. Like, it all was flowing very nicely. And then once the last half of episode 10 hit, everything started to feel a bit rushed. And this episode especially, it was like we totally rushed through Organization X. The flash drive at the end, where he just destroys the flash drive, like, Shion, you could have held on to it. I mean, like, I get symbolically why he destroys it, because it's like, it's the one remnant of number 6, and he's like, we're going to leave behind number 6 and start anew. I get why he destroys it, but maybe you shouldn't have. I don't know. I I feel like at the last minute they remembered he had the flash drive and they were like, oh yeah, let's just have him destroy it. Because I feel like while they were at the correctional facility, they could have used the flash drive or did something with it. There's so many characters from the manga that have been cut out of this anime, like the doctors with Organization X, that I'm hoping the manga is going to explain more of, and Karen's connection to them, and more with Yaoman. I felt like the Yaoman plot is going to be expanded upon. That I feel like the events of episodes 10 and 11, particularly, are going to have like their own volume. And that has me excited because I want to see what changes, what's added, what else goes on. Like, I'm so curious. But I feel so bittersweet because I didn't want this show to end, and now I'm kind of frustrated because I want to know what happened. So what's going to happen next week is that where this episode usually falls on my weekly reactions, I'm going to have a soapbox where I talk about the manga and I talk about what was left out. I'm going to go volume by volume and talk about what was there from the anime, what was changed from the anime, and what was left out. I want to talk about those three aspects of it and kind of my overall impressions. I have a feeling, because a lot of you have said if you don't like the anime ending, you're going to like the manga, and vice versa. And which makes sense. If you liked this anime and how it ended, then you probably won't like if it changes in the manga. I totally get that. But for me, I mean, if they keep the same thing with both of them getting shot and Eurylia saving both of them, if they keep that in there in the manga, that's fine. But I just feel like even if they keep the same ending or the same plot thing, I feel like there's going to be so much more expanded upon and so much more conversation and so much more dialogue and exposition between the characters. That's what's missing. And I feel like the dystopian, like some of you have commented in the show, the dystopian elements and the stuff with the wasps and everything have kind of become like a side plot. And I think that in the manga so far, they're more lasered in, focused on. So that's going to be interesting. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see it. But I can't wait to talk to you all about the manga and what's similar and different. So there's that. But I'm not mad at this ending. I really am not. I felt so shell-shocked, literally, because it just ended. It was like, oh crap, now it's over. Like, it didn't feel like the ending of a series, even though it structurally was designed to be the ending and have resolution and have a climax and have an ending. It felt too rushed for me, and I felt like there still needs to be more episodes happening. So that makes me excited to read the manga and then talking with y'all and letting you know. So next week we'll have the soapbox number 6, the manga, talking about the rest of that, and then we'll do a live stream after that. So I'll have details in the community post about the live stream, and they'll be in the description of the next episode where we talk about the manga. So hopefully we can talk more then about number 6. But yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts about this show now that we're at the ending. If you have read the manga, please don't spoil me because I want to read the manga and see what happens. But if you haven't read the manga, or if you can comment without spoiling the manga, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you thought about this episode, what you're hoping the manga will give us more information about, and then just let me know your overall thoughts. So thank you guys so much for not spoiling this series and for voting for this. I like this series so much that I'm really eager to read the manga and see how it actually was meant to conclude. I'm pretty excited about that. So next week, we'll talk about the manga. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back next week to finish our discussion of number 6. Bye.